The billion-dollar interruption, like this video right now if you think money solves every problem. Seriously, hit that like button. For his entire life, Elias Thorne had been the embodiment of absolute control. At 30, he was the youngest titan of the tech world, a ruthless CEO who commanded an empire worth billions. Power, wealth, precision, those were the only currencies that mattered in his sterile, structured world. He believed his life was bulletproof, utterly predictable, until a random Saturday afternoon, on the manicured 18th hole of the exclusive, windswept Cypress Point Club in Pebble Beach, California. His perfect swing was interrupted by 4 simple, shattering words from 2 small children. "You're our daddy." Standing before him were a 6-year-old boy and girl, their identical hazel eyes wide with a fragile mix of hope and hesitancy. Elias didn't know their names. He'd never seen them before. Yet something in their faces, a precise cut to the jawline, a focused intensity in their gaze, was devastatingly familiar. In that moment, the relentless, unstoppable Elias Thorne, the man who always held the winning hand, felt a cold, stomach-lurching panic. Because if their claim was true, his life wasn't just his own anymore. It belonged to them, too. Subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss the shocking truth about Elias's past. Chapter 1. The Calculated Life. Shattered, Elias Thorne had built his life on certainty. His world revolved around billion-dollar deals, flawlessly executed strategies, and an unbreakable routine that kept him effortlessly atop the tech pyramid. His name was currency in every boardroom from San Francisco to Tokyo. Golf was his one permitted escape, a way to clear the computational clutter from his mind. The air was crisp, the ocean view stunning, and the silence was total. Just as he prepared for a crucial putt, a small, tentative voice pierced the tranquility. "Excuse me, sir." Elias froze, his focus instantly dissolving. He turned, expecting a caddy or a course official. Instead, he saw the 2 small children, a boy and a girl, no older than 6, with surprisingly mature, curious expressions. He frowned, irritated by the breach of protocol. Children weren't allowed on the course unless accompanied by a member. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone polite, but sharp enough to stop an adult in their tracks. The children exchanged a look. The girl, slightly bolder, stepped forward, her small hands clenched at her sides. "You're our daddy," she repeated. The words felt like a physical blow. Elias's mind scrambled for a logical explanation. A mistake. A bad joke. He didn't have children. He'd spent his late 20s and early 30s laser-focused on his career, avoiding any relationship that demanded more than casual involvement. "You must have me confused with someone else," he stated carefully. "Where are your parents?" The girl's lips pressed into a thin line, and the boy looked down at the grass. A sudden, heavy silence fell. "Our mom is gone," the girl said quietly. The boy, pulling a creased, faded photo from a tiny backpack, walked forward and held it out with a trembling hand. Elias took it. The moment his eyes registered the image, his breath hitched. It was a photo of him, younger, standing beside a woman he'd known intimately years ago in Boston, back when he was a hungry entrepreneur fighting his way up. Isabella. Their connection had been intense but brief, a fleeting, passionate detour that ended when his ambition called him away. He never looked back. He never knew she was pregnant. Eva looked from the photo to the children. Their eyes, the shape of their faces, the subtle arch of their brows. It was undeniable. They were Isabella's. And if they were hers, they were his. His voice was rough. I didn't know." The girl, whose eyes held a wisdom far beyond her years, simply said, "We know." Elias felt his perfectly constructed world crumble. He'd spent his life planning every move. But standing there, on the 18th green, with 2 children, staring up at him, waiting for an answer. He was terrifyingly lost. For the first time in his life, Elias Thorne had absolutely no idea what to do. Chapter 2. The Data Dump. Elias sat in his penthouse office overlooking the dizzying Seattle skyline, the photograph clutched in his hand. The last 24 hours were a surreal blur. He'd walked onto that golf course a solitary billionaire and left with the knowledge that he was the father of 6-year-old twins he'd never known existed. Chloe and Leo. He called his most trusted asset, his COO, Daniel Grant, a man whose discretion was as valuable as his expertise. Daniel entered with his usual efficiency, placing a sleek folder on the desk. "I ran the full background, sir," Daniel said, his voice neutral. "Their mother, Isabella Carson, passed away 3 months ago. Cancer. She never married, never established a long-term partner, and there's no evidence she ever attempted to contact you." Elias scrubbed a hand over his face. Isabella had been sick, and he hadn't known. The children were placed with a family friend, but no permanent guardian was assigned, Daniel continued. "Legally, you are the closest living relative. Given your status and resources, full custody would be a formality." Elias looked up sharply. Custody? Responsibility? Fatherhood? None of these words fit his personal lexicon. He'd meticulously avoided attachments to ensure nothing could slow him down. Now, 2 small beings had turned that philosophy on its head. Viewer question. If you were Elias, would you immediately fight for custody? Or would you try to find them a more stable home first? Drop your honest opinion in the comments. "Where are they now?" Elias asked. His voice low. "They're at the executive hotel suite I arranged. I made sure they have everything they could possibly need." Elias nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He'd focused on data, on verification, but not on them. He'd left them in a strange hotel, with strangers after they'd just lost their mother. He stood up, grabbing his jacket. "I need to see them." Daniel stepped aside. "Should I instruct the legal team to start the custody paperwork?" Elias hesitated. Then he shook his head. "Not yet. First, I need to figure out what they need from me." Chapter 3. An unplanned experiment. Elias stepped into the expansive suite. The luxury was irrelevant to him, and clearly, to the 2 small figures huddled on the sofa. Chloe and Leo sat side by side. Chloe's arms were crossed, her small legs swinging. Leo held a worn teddy bear, clinging to the last familiar thing he had. When they looked up and saw him, a flurry of emotions crossed their faces. Uncertainty, curiosity, and a deep, guarded hurt. "Hello," Elias managed. It felt inadequate. Chloe spoke first. "You came." It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. Elias walked closer, resisting the urge to jam his hands in his pockets like a nervous teenager. "Of course I did." He sat down in the armchair opposite them. "I know this is unexpected," he admitted. "For all of us." Leo spoke, his voice tiny. "You didn't know about us, did you?" Elias could have lied, could have softened the blow. But looking at them, bearing the weight of loss, he knew they deserved the truth. "No," he said quietly. "I didn't." Leo's question came next, hitting him harder than any market crash. "Would you have wanted to?" Elias opened his mouth, but for once the words failed him. Would he? Back then he was ruthless, only focused on the ascent. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "But I know I have a choice now, and I want to do this right." Chloe's eyes narrowed. "What does do this right mean?" "It means I want to get to know you. I want to make sure you're safe. And if you let me, I want us to figure out what happens next. Together." Leo clutched his bear tighter. "We don't have anywhere else to go." "You don't have to," Elias said, his voice firming with a purpose he hadn't felt before. "You have me now." It wasn't instant acceptance, but the tension in the room eased. Chloe eventually sighed, uncrossing her arms. I guess we'll see if you're any good at it. Elias let out a small, breathless laugh. I guess we will. Chapter 4. Chaos in the Penthouse. Elias had always prided himself on adapting, but nothing prepared him for the chaos that came with 2 6-year-olds. His minimalist, precision-engineered penthouse now felt like an unexpected daycare center. One morning, he walked into his immaculate kitchen. Chloe was sitting on the marble counter, swinging her legs as she ate toast, her brown, curly hair sticking out wildly. Leo was next to her, stirring a bowl of cereal with intense concentration. His teddy bear sat beside his bowl, apparently also having breakfast. Elias paused in the doorway. He could close a billion-dollar deal in an hour, but he had no idea of the proper protocol for breakfast with children. "Good morning," Chloe chirped through a mouthful of toast. "Good morning," Elias replied, clearing his throat. Chloe studied his formal attire. "You don't eat breakfast?" "Usually just coffee," Elias said, walking toward the machine. Chloe made a face. "That's boring." Leo finally looked up. "Coffee is gross." Elias smiled. "It is when you're 6. "So what now?" Chloe asked. You're leaning forward. "Now we figure things out. I've spoken to my team about schooling, and we'll make sure you have everything you need." Leo frowned. "We already went to school." "I know," Elias said, "but that was then. Now you're here, and I want you to be in a safe place, a comfortable place." Chloe tilted her head. "Are we staying?" The question hung in the air. He saw the need for assurance in their eyes, the need to know they weren't temporary guests. "Yes," he said finally. "You're staying." Leo pushed his cereal bowl away. "What if you change your mind?" Elias set down his coffee cup and knelt, bringing himself to the boy's eye level. "I didn't know about you before, and I can't change that. But I know about you now, and I'm not going anywhere." Leo studied his face, searching for any sign of deception. Whatever he saw must have been enough, because he gave a slight nod. Chloe, satisfied, grinned. "Good, because my room needs to be purple." Elias chuckled. "Purple, noted." Chloe went back to her toast. "And we should probably get a dog." Elias choked on his coffee. "Let's take it one step at a time. Viewer question. What's the first non-work activity?" Elias should plan with Chloe and Leo to truly bond. Family movie night, trip to the zoo, or learning to ride bikes. Chapter 5. The Unexpected Anchor. Elias had always believed control was the key to success, but in the weeks that followed, 2 children completely dismantled that philosophy. His life became an unplanned experiment in love and chaos. One Saturday morning, he took them to a sprawling public park near the coast. Elias had never been to a park, just to be. He watched as Chloe instantly found a group of kids playing tag, her laughter echoing freely. Leo was more reserved, clinging to Elias's side. "I don't know what to do," the boy confessed. Elias surveyed the park. His eyes landed on a kite stand. He walked over, bought a bright crimson kite, and returned to Leo. "Ever flown a kite?" Leo shook his head. "Then we'll figure it out," Elias said, helping him unspool the string. "Run, and when the wind catches it, let it go." After a few frustrated attempts, the kite suddenly soared, catching the strong sea breeze. Leo's eyes went wide with pure, unadulterated awe. He watched it climb higher and higher. Elias stood beside him, hands in his pockets, watching the boy's face more than the kite. "Not bad," he murmured. Leo grinned, and for the first time, Elias saw a spark of genuine confidence in his son's eyes. As the sun began to set, they sat on a bench, eating melting ice cream cones. Chloe looked at him, thoughtful. "You don't smile much, do you?" Elias raised an eyebrow. "I smile." Leo shook his head. "Not really." Elias took a small bite of his vanilla ice cream. "I suppose I never had a reason to." "And now?" Chloe asked. Elias met her gaze. He looked at Leo, still focused on his melting cone, but listening intently. "Now," Elias said slowly, "I think I might be figuring it out." The man who built his empire on control was finally learning that the most valuable things in life were the ones you couldn't plan for. Ending the true worth of a man. A month later, Elias sat in his living room, watching Chloe and Leo argue over which movie to watch. He'd spent his life looking forward, always chasing the next deal, the next billion, the next conquest. But here, in this moment of mundane, noisy reality, he felt utterly complete. "Toss a coin," Elias suggested, pulling a quarter from his pocket. "Heads for The Lion King, tails for Toy Story." He flipped it. Tails. Leo cheered as Chloe groaned dramatically. As the movie started, Chloe leaned back against the sofa. "You used to lose a lot?" she asked, genuinely curious. Elias paused. He'd never shared his past with anyone. "I wasn't always the best at everything," he admitted. "When I was your age, every time I failed, I told myself I had to work harder. That if I worked hard enough, no one would ever beat me again." Chloe considered this. "Did it work?" "I stopped losing," Elias said. "But I also stopped playing for fun. Winning became the only thing that mattered." Leo spoke softly from his spot on the couch. "So, you don't care about winning anymore?" Elias met his eyes. "I still care, but I've learned that some things are more important." Chloe smiled, a knowing 6-year-old smile. Like us, Elias felt a tightness in his chest, a feeling he now recognized as love. The man who had spent his life building walls found those walls crumbling around the simplest, most undeniable truth. "Yes," he said, his voice quiet, but absolute. "Like you." He leaned back, the sound of the movie and the children's breathing a comforting rhythm. The billionaire who once defined himself by his empire now understood his true worth. It wasn't in the valuation of his company, but in the trust of 2 small, hazel-eyed children. He hadn't planned for them. He hadn't asked for them. But now, for the first time in his life, Elias Thorne wasn't building for himself. He was building a family. And in this unexpected, beautiful chaos, he was exactly where he was meant to be. Don't forget to comment your favorite part of Elias's journey and subscribe. Miss another story of transformation? Thank you for watching. Chapter 6. The Boardroom versus the Bedtime Story. Like this video, if you agree that family time is more important than work, let me know in the comments. Elias Thorne had always prided himself on his ability to compartmentalize. His business life, sharp, precise, and ruthless, was a world away from his personal life, which until recently had been almost non-existent. But after a month with Chloe and Leo, the walls between these worlds were dissolving, often in spectacular fashion. One Tuesday morning, Elias was on a high-stakes, cross-continental video call with his executive team regarding a critical acquisition. He was in his home office, wearing a bespoke suit, his face set in his usual expression of calculated intensity. "The valuation is non-negotiable," Elias stated, leaning into the camera. "Tell their CEO we walk unless they concede the patent rights." Just as his COO, Daniel, began to confirm the instruction, the door to the office burst open. Chloe, wearing a pink tutu over her pajamas and carrying a glitter-covered wand, marched in. Leo trailed behind her, clutching his bear and a pastgeboom. Sword. "Daddy, we need a judge," Chloe declared, stopping right in front of the camera. Elias, momentarily paralyzed, watched as his global team, a collection of the most powerful and cynical minds in tech, stared at the screen. "I am in a meeting, Chloe," Elias whispered harshly, trying to wave her out of the frame. "It's important," she insisted. "Leo says he's a dragon, but dragons don't have bears. I say he's just a prince in a disguise, and we need a ruling." Leo nodded solemnly. Dragons can have emotional support bears, Dad. On the screen, a small, almost imperceptible smirk appeared on Daniel's face. Elias took a deep, steadying breath. This was a billion-dollar deal, and he was being held hostage by a princess and a bear-carrying dragon. The old Elias would have exploded. The new Elias simply rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Team," he said, addressing the camera with a calmness that belied the chaos. "Take a 5-minute recess. Daniel, handle the patent issue. I'll call you back with an answer." He hit the end call button. He knelt down, meeting his children's earnest gazes. "All right, Judge Thorne is in session. Exhibit A, the supposed dragon." After listening intently to both sides of the argument and examining the structural integrity of the plastic sword, Elias delivered his verdict. "Leo is a very rare, high-intelligence dragon, and his bear, Mr. Snuggles, is his crucial co-pilot. Chloe is correct that he is technically a prince, but only when he's napping." The children, satisfied with the diplomatic solution, hugged him and skipped out to continue their game, leaving a dusting of glitter on his Italian carpet. Elias stood up, running a hand through his hair. He looked at the empty camera. The chaos was real, but so was the unexpected satisfaction. Viewer question: how long do you think it will take for Elias to accept the glitter and chaos in his life? A month? A year? Never share your prediction. Chapter 7. The True Acquisition. Elias called Daniel back. His COO looked amused, a dangerous sign. "The dragon seemed convincing, sir," Daniel commented dryly. Elias ignored the jab. "Did you address the patent issue?" "I did. They refused. They're holding firm." The old Elias would have leveraged, threatened, or walked. But as he looked at the door, still slightly ajar from the royal visit, he thought of the children, and a new kind of clarity emerged. "Tell them we'll concede the patent rights for now," Elias said. Daniel's jaw dropped slightly. "Sir, that's $200 million in future value, are you sure?" "I'm sure," Elias confirmed. "But tell them this. We want the clause that mandates their CEO to personally head up the new community outreach program. Specifically, the one that involves volunteering at inner-city schools and mentoring children." Daniel hesitated. "They'll hate that. Their CEO avoids public engagement." "Exactly," Elias said, a flicker of his old ruthlessness returning, but this time channeled for a different purpose. "Tell them the optics of a tech titan refusing to help children will look far worse than losing a patent. The deal closes tonight, and make sure our media team is ready to promote the new community focus. It's the new direction of Thorne Industries." After the call, Elias didn't immediately move on to the next task. He sat back in his chair, not looking at the financial reports, but at the tiny, sparkling residue of glitter on his hand. He realized he hadn't just acquired a company. He had acquired a new perspective. He was still driven, still strategic, but the goal had shifted. Success was no longer just about adding zeros to his bank account. It was about creating a legacy that his children could be proud of, one that wasn't built on cold calculation, but on impact and humanity. Final chapter. The unscripted life. It was Friday night, pizza night. Elias was in the living room, building a comically large fort out of blankets and cushions with Chloe and Leo. His tie was loosened, his shirt untucked, and he was laughing. A genuine, deep sound he hadn't known he was capable of. Chloe was struggling with a pillow. "This corner needs to be stronger, Daddy. It's the castle turret." "Right," Elias murmured, applying his analytical mind to the problem of structural integrity in soft furnishings. "We need a counterweight." Leo was busy arranging his dragon hoard inside, a pile of stuffed animals, toy cars, and of course, Mr. Snuggles. As they finally finished, crawling inside the wobbly, dimly lit space, the silence was broken only by the sound of chewing pizza. "This is the best castle ever," Leo declared. Chloe leaned against Elias's side. Daddy, why do you have so many boring meetings? Elias wrapped an arm around her small shoulders. I used to think those meetings were the most important part of my life. I thought they were what defined me. And now? Leo asked, looking up from his pizza. Elias looked at the two faces illuminated by the soft glow of the fairy lights Chloe had insisted on. He looked at the fortress they had built, which was messy, imperfect, and absolutely essential. Now, he said, his voice husky with emotion, I realize the most important things in my life are the ones that can't be scheduled, can't be controlled, and can't be bought. They are the things I build with my hands and with my heart. Elias Thorne had started as a man who measured his worth by his power. He ended as a father who measured his life by the smiles of his children. He had lost the control he craved, but he had found the purpose he truly needed. His empire was still vast, but his world, once sterile and cold, was finally, beautifully, full. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about how life's greatest surprises change us for the better. And share this video with someone who needs a reminder about what truly matters. Chapter 8. The Ghost of Isabella. Like this video, if you believe it's never too late to try and make things right. One rainy afternoon, several weeks after the dragon-ruling incident, Elias found Chloe and Leo in the attic, looking through old boxes shipped from their mother's friend. They were silent, a quietness that always worried Elias more than their chaos. He knelt beside them. Leo was tracing the worn fabric of Mr. Snuggles, while Chloe held a small, heart-shaped locket. What's this? Elias asked softly. Chloe opened the locket. Inside was a tiny, faded photo of Isabella. Mommy gave it to me before she went to sleep forever, Chloe whispered. Leo suddenly looked up at Elias, his hazel eyes clouded with confusion. Why didn't you know us, Daddy? Did you not love Mommy enough to stay? The question was a direct hit. Elias felt a familiar, protective instinct, the urge to deflect, to intellectualize, to offer money as a shield. But he knew that wouldn't work with them. That's a very important question, Leo, Elias said, meeting his son's gaze honestly. And the truth is, I made a mistake a long, long time ago. He took a deep breath. Your mother and I were two very young people who cared about each other, but we had very different dreams. I was chasing success and power, the things I thought would make me happy. I thought that success meant I had to leave everything else behind, even the people who mattered. I was so focused on building my future, I didn't realize I was walking away from a beautiful future that was already starting with your mother. He paused, letting the heavy words settle. I didn't know about you, but even if I had, the man I was back then was too selfish and too scared to be a father. I didn't know how to love something more than my own ambition. Chloe's lower lip trembled. So you didn't want us? Elias reached out, gently taking both their small, cold hands. No, I didn't know you existed, but that doesn't mean I didn't want you. The man I am now, this end right here, he wants you more than anything he's ever built. I can't change the past, but I can promise you this. Every single day from now on, I will be the father you deserve. Viewer question. If you were Isabella, knowing how focused Elias was on his career, would you have told him about the children? Comment with your thoughts. Chapter 9. The billionaire's budget. Liz had been trying to win them over with grand gestures. He had hired a world-class chef, installed an interactive entertainment room, and was having a custom-built, multi-story treehouse engineered for the backyard. But he quickly learned that in the world of a 6-year-old, a small moment was worth more than a massive budget. One evening, Elias found Chloe sitting glumly at the massive kitchen island, surrounded by a pile of expensive art supplies. What's wrong, sweetie? I don't know how to make the green that Mommy used for her paintings, Chloe pouted. The chef tried to help, but he used the wrong blue. Elias sighed. He could buy every shade of green ever manufactured, but he couldn't replicate the memory. He sat down and pulled the pristine supplies toward him. "Show me the colors you have," he instructed. Using the analytical skills he usually applied to quarterly reports, Elias started mixing. He carefully combined a primary blue and a sunny yellow, adding tiny dots of white and black until he achieved a deep, earthy shade. "You see, Chloe," he explained, holding up the palette. "Sometimes the best things aren't bought pre-made. You have to take two good things, combine them, and work patiently until you create something new and better." Chloe's eyes widened. "It's Mommy's green." Leo walked over and inspected the color. "It's perfect, Dad. You fixed it." Elias felt a surge of pride that dwarfed the feeling of closing a 9-figure deal. He hadn't fixed it with money. He had fixed it by simply being present and focusing on the details that mattered to them. He realized the Thorn Empire wasn't built on expensive materials, but on connection. He needed to stop being a provider and start being an anchor. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss Elias learning how to bake. It will be hilarious. Final chapter. The new foundation. Elias's life began to change fundamentally. His structured calendar, once filled with back-to-back meetings, now had non-negotiable blocks labeled school pickup, Leo's soccer practice, and Chloe's bedtime story, must read in character. He learned how to comfort without offering a new toy, how to listen without offering a solution, and how to apologize when he messed up. One Saturday morning, Elias was taking the children to the park when Daniel called. "Sir, the CEO of our main rival just called. He said the community initiative you pushed through is making them look bad. He's demanding a meeting." The old Elias would have relished the confrontation. The new Elias paused, looking at Leo trying to hold Chloe's hand, while simultaneously managing Mr. Snuggles and a scooter. "Tell him I'm unavailable this morning, Daniel," Elias said, a faint smile in his voice. "Unavailable, sir, but this is a strategic move. We could crush them." "No, Daniel," Elias corrected, his tone firm. "I have a commitment this morning. Tell him I'm busy building a foundation that is far more valuable than his company. I'm busy being a dad." He hung up, pocketed his phone, and turned his full attention to the two small people waiting for him. Elias Thorn was still the man who controlled $1 billion empire. But he was now, unequivocally, defined by the people he chose to love. His journey was a powerful testament that true wealth isn't in what you acquire, but in what you nurture. He had finally let go of the rigid control of his past, embracing the beautiful, unpredictable, and fiercely loving life he was now building with his children. Thank you for watching. Which character's journey touches your heart the most? Elias, Chloe, or Leo? Let me know in the comments below. Chapter 10. The touchline test. Like this video. If you think parents are secretly the most competitive people on earth, tell me your funniest parent story in the comments. Elias Thorn, the man who effortlessly negotiated with world leaders, found himself facing his biggest fear yet: parenting in public. It was Leo's first intramural soccer game, a chaotic, muddy spectacle at a local public park. Elias arrived in his usual attire, a pristine cashmere sweater and pressed chinos, looking like he'd mistakenly wandered off a yacht. He had his own leather-bound tablet, ready to take strategic notes on Leo's field performance. Leo, usually reserved, was surprisingly energetic, chasing the ball with Mr. Snuggles, sitting carefully on the edge of the bench. Chloe, meanwhile, was treating the sidelines like a runway, giving Elias unsolicited commentary. "Dad, their team color is green. That's not fair. Green is a sneaky color," Chloe announced, adjusting her stylish, tiny sunglasses. Elias was struggling to process the scene, the aggressive elbowing from the other parents, the confusing rules, and the complete lack of a predictable score. Leo is playing in the wrong quadrant, Elias muttered to himself, trying to mentally map out a better formation. Suddenly, a woman with bright pink hair, covered in mud splatters, and wearing an oversized team hoodie, planted herself next to Elias. This was Maya, the mother of Leo's enthusiastic but often distracted teammate, Sam. "New dad, right?" Maya asked, her voice friendly but loud. "Don't worry, everyone looks like they know what they're doing, but we're all just praying our kids don't eat dirt." Elias, unused to unsolicited parental conversation, straightened up. "I was just analyzing the formation. Leo needs to apply more pressure on the flanks to control the midfield." Maya burst out laughing. "Honey, they're 6. Leo just needs to remember which goal is his, and look," she pointed. Leo, in a moment of 6-year-old confusion, had just kicked the ball with gusto into his own team's net. A collective groan rose from their side. Leo's face crumpled immediately. Elias's protective instinct flared. He wanted to march onto the field, pull Leo off, and shield him from the humiliation. But before he could, Maya grabbed his arm. "Watch," she said softly. The coach, a kind, beleaguered father, didn't yell. He knelt and whispered something to Leo. Then, one by one, Leo's teammates patted his back. Maya turned to Elias. "He's fine. It happens. The point isn't the score, it's learning how to mess up and come back, and knowing someone has your back." Elias swallowed. His entire life had taught him that mistakes were a sign of weakness, and community was a liability. He slowly put his tablet away. When Leo walked off at halftime, face still damp, he didn't run to Elias for a tactical review. He ran to Maya. "I kicked it in the wrong goal, Maya." "I know, sweetie, but you ran so fast. That's an Olympic-level mistake." Maya ruffled his hair and handed him a juice box. Elias stood there, holding a generic water bottle, feeling utterly useless. He realized his wealth and power meant nothing here. He wasn't connecting. He was observing. Viewer question: what should Elias do right now to genuinely connect with Leo after the own goal incident? Offer a treat? Give a pep talk? Or just give a quiet hug? Chapter 11. The Huddle. Elias knew he had to step out of his comfort zone. He walked over to Leo, knelt in the mud beside him, ruining his expensive chinos, and just held him. "Hey, buddy," Elias whispered. "That was a pretty spectacular kick, even if it was in the wrong direction." Leo giggled, a shaky, relieved sound. "It was big, right?" "It was huge. You learned something important today, Leo. You learned that sometimes you try your absolute hardest, and things still go sideways. And you also learned that when things go sideways, your team will always be there for you." He looked up at Maya, who nodded her approval. "And you," Elias said, turning to Chloe, "you were the loudest cheerleader. That's important." Chloe preened. "I'm good at making noise, Daddy." The second half was a mess of running, tripping, and more giggling than scoring. Elias no longer tried to analyze. He cheered loudly when they ran, and he laughed when they fell. He felt a sense of belonging he hadn't realized was missing, a messy, imperfect, and incredibly warm belonging. After the game, covered in mud, Elias was packing up when Maya walked over. "You're a good dad, Elias," she said simply. "You showed up, and you knelt in the mud. That's all they ever really need." Elias looked at his now stained pants. "I used to think being a dad meant providing everything." "No," Maya smiled. "It means being part of the chaos. It means asking for help when you need it, and showing up for the small stuff." She paused. "We're all a team here, Elias. Welcome to the sidelines." Elias extended a muddy hand. "Thank you, Maya." It was the most genuine handshake he'd given in years. Final chapter. The unbeatable team. That evening, tucked into the warm, scented chaos of the children's bedroom, Elias was reading a bedtime story. Chloe was under one arm, and Leo, with Mr. Snuggles, was under the other. "Daddy," Leo said sleepily, Even though I kicked the ball in the wrong goal, you didn't get mad. Why would I get mad? Elias asked, kissing the top of his head. Because you usually only like things when they're perfect. Leo murmured. Elias closed the book. He looked at the two little faces, his entire world. Leo, Chloe, when you look at me, you see a man who builds big towers and makes big deals. That man strives for perfection in business. But when I look at you two, I don't see an asset to control or a problem to solve. He squeezed them close. I see the only perfect thing I've ever been lucky enough to have. Everything about you, the chaos, the glitter, the own goals, it's all perfect to me. You are my team, and we are the unbeatable. Elias Thorne had finally discovered the ultimate truth. The greatest victory in his life wasn't a business acquisition or a stock market surge. It was the messy, joyful, unscripted victory of unconditional love. He had stopped building a solitary empire and had started nurturing a thriving family, finding more strength and certainty in their shared huddle than he ever found alone at the top. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video if Elias finally convinced you that even billionaires need a little mud and a lot of love. See you next time. The billionaire's airport shock. A past reappears, with a child in tow. Hook. No way. Daniel Brooks froze. A few feet away, in the bustling airport terminal, stood Amelia Green. His ex. The woman who vanished from his life without explanation 3 years ago. But she wasn't alone. In her arms, she held a small child, bundled in a blue, bare-eared coat. Daniel's breath hitched. It couldn't be. He'd recognize her anywhere, even with slightly longer hair and a sharper jawline. Her expression was tense, as if on high alert, trying to pass unnoticed. He took a step towards her. Amelia looked up, and their eyes met. For an instant, everything seemed to stop. Daniel saw fear on her face, but before he could react, she averted her gaze and quickened her pace. "Amelia!" he tried to call out, but the airport noise drowned his voice. He pushed forward, dodging passengers with luggage, ignoring the blare of boarding announcements. He couldn't lose her again. When he reached the spot where he last saw her, she was gone. A knot formed in his throat. It couldn't be just a coincidence. That child had something unsettling about him. Daniel stood still, trying to calm his racing pulse. His eyes hadn't deceived him. The boy had his eyes. What would you do if you saw your ex-partner with a child who looked exactly like you? Tell us your first reaction in the comments below. The haunting eyes and a relentless search. Another one? Asked Mark Thompson, his partner and best friend, tilting his head. Daniel took a gulp of his whiskey and nodded. They were in his penthouse in Manhattan, the city lights glittering beyond the windows. I saw her, Mark, there, at the airport. Mark put his glass down. Are you sure? You think I wouldn't recognize her? Daniel ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. It was her, and she was carrying a child. A child. Daniel closed his eyes. He had my eyes, Mark. Silence hung heavy. Are you saying that? I don't know, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. But I can't get it out of my head. Did you try to talk to her? I tried. She disappeared, as always. Mark sighed and rubbed his chin. Look, buddy, if you think that child could be yours, you have to find out. You can't just sit around waiting for destiny to send you the answer. Daniel clenched his jaw. I don't know where to find her. Mark watched him for a moment and then smiled ironically. Don't mess with me. You're Daniel Brooks. If anyone can find a person, it's you. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat in his study, staring at his laptop screen, but not reading the pending emails. Amelia. He hadn't seen her in 3 years. 3 years without a single damn explanation. He remembered the day she disappeared. There were no prior arguments, no signs that anything was wrong. Just a terse text message. "I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore." He had tried to find her at first, but there was no trace, as if she had been swallowed by the earth. Now, out of nowhere, she reappeared with a child who had his very own eyes. He lit a cigarette, something he only did when his mind was on the verge of collapse. He couldn't leave this unresolved. He was going to find her. And this time, he wouldn't let her escape without answers. A familiar face in a small town. "You don't look good, Daniel." Mark crossed his arms as he watched him. They were in the offices of Brooks Capital, the investment fund they had built together over the last decade. Daniel had been looking lost and frowning for days, which for anyone who knew him meant he was on the verge of exploding. "I haven't slept well." "Tell me about it," Mark smirked. "Have you found anything?" Daniel took out his cell phone and impatiently swiped the screen. "I called some contacts, but I don't have anything yet. No one knows about her." "And why don't you try looking for her yourself?" "Because I don't know where to start." Mark scoffed. "Brother, stop messing with your head and do what you would do with any other investment. Look for information. Didn't you have contacts in a smaller town, like upstate New York? You said she was from there, right?" Daniel fell silent. "Maybe someone has seen her. A friend. An old contact. What do you have to lose by trying?" Daniel sighed. "Nothing." "Exactly. So get your butt in gear and start looking." That afternoon, Daniel drove to a small town upstate. As he drove, his mind spun out of control. The child. Ever since he saw him, the image had stuck to him like a splinter. He couldn't stop thinking about his eyes. His mother always said the Brooks family had an unmistakable gaze, that intense blue rarely seen. If Amelia had had a child, why did she never tell him? If he was his, why did she hide something like that from him? He gripped the steering wheel tightly. The idea that she could have hidden something so important from him filled him with rage. But there was also fear. Fear of discovering that he had lost 3 years of his son's life. The search in the town was harder than he imagined. He asked in cafes, bookstores, and even universities, but no one seemed to know her. Until he reached a small restaurant near the town square. "Amelia Green," he asked the waitress, showing her an old photo on his cell phone. The woman frowned, as if trying to remember. "I think I've seen her. She comes sometimes with her boy." Daniel's heart raced. "Do you know where she lives?" "No, but she usually comes in the afternoons." Daniel ordered a coffee and waited. The clock read 6 when Amelia entered the restaurant. Daniel saw her before she noticed him. She was wearing a gray coat, the same one she had at the airport. She walked quickly, as if she was used to surveying her surroundings. And there he was, the child, Leo. She held his hand, and Daniel's blood froze. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. He stood up just as Amelia looked up and saw him. Her eyes widened in shock. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "I could ask you the same thing." The tension was unbearable. Amelia straightened up, as if she wanted to block her reaction. "It's not the time. You've been hiding from me for 3 years. I think any time is a good time." She pressed her lips together. "I have nothing to say to you." Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Seriously?" He looked at the child. "Nothing to say to me?" Amelia swallowed and looked around nervously. "Don't do this here." Daniel leaned towards her, his voice low and tense. "Is that child mine?" Amelia felt the world crashing down on her. What do you think Amelia will say or do next? Will she reveal the truth or continue to hide? Share your thoughts in the comments. The unspoken truth and a mother's confession. Amelia felt her throat close up. The restaurant seemed to have fallen silent. The weight of Daniel's question was unbearable, and although her instinct screamed at her to run, she knew that this time she wouldn't be able to escape. Amelia. His voice was low, contained, but dangerous. Answer me. She swallowed and looked at Leo, who was playing with a plastic spoon on the table. Not here, she whispered. Daniel let out a bitter laugh. Then where? Because it seems that if I don't run into you by chance, you were never going to tell me. Amelia felt the burning in her eyes, but forced herself to remain firm. My place. Daniel watched her, hesitating. It's not a trap, she said wearily. He nodded distrustfully. Let's go. Amelia's apartment was small, 2 sparsely furnished rooms. Daniel looked around without saying anything, but his expression said it all. You lived like this with my son? Leo fell asleep on the sofa as soon as they arrived. Daniel stared at him intently. Is he mine? He asked again, directly. Amelia felt her stomach knot. Yes. The word hung in the air. Daniel let out a sigh, as if he had been punched in the chest. He ran his hands over his face, and then walked to the window, turning his back to her. How long have you known? Since the beginning. And you never thought of telling me? I couldn't. Daniel turned sharply. You couldn't? Why? Amelia closed her eyes for a second before speaking. Your mother forced me to leave. Daniel's face hardened. What? When I found out I was pregnant, I tried to tell you, but Eleanor got to me first. She told me you were no longer interested in me, that you were with another woman. Daniel's eyes widened in fury. That's a lie. I know, but at that moment I didn't know, and she offered me money to disappear so I wouldn't cause you problems. Did you accept? No. Amelia lifted her chin. I left because she made me doubt, because I felt displaced before I could even talk to you. Daniel felt his blood boil. I can't believe my mother would do that. Amelia looked down. I didn't expect you to. The silence between them was thick. I need a moment, he said, walking away towards the door. Daniel, she called. He stopped but didn't turn around. I'm not leaving, he said firmly. Leo is my son. I'm not disappearing. And he left, leaving Amelia with a lump in her throat. The unseen years and a fierce resolve. Daniel walked aimlessly through the streets of the small town, his mind spinning out of control. His mother, Eleanor Brooks, had always been a manipulative woman, but he never thought she would go this far. Manipulating Amelia, making her believe he had forgotten her, and worst of all, hiding his own son from him. He leaned against a wall and closed his eyes, breathing deeply. Leo. Now everything made sense. From the moment he saw the child, he knew there was something more, something that couldn't just be a coincidence. Now he had the certainty. He was his son. 3 years. 3 damned years that had been stolen from his life. He felt a fierce rage, a need to confront his mother instantly. But he knew he first had to resolve something more important. Amelia, she had kept him away. Yes, but now he understood why. And although his anger was still there, he also knew he couldn't afford to keep losing time with his son. He took out his phone and dialed. Mark, now what did you do? I have a son. There was a long silence. Tell me it's not a joke. It's not. His name is Leo. Amelia hid him from me, but not of her own accord. It was my mother. Mark let out an expletive. Damn it, Dan. What are you going to do? Daniel looked at the dark sky over the town. I'm going to meet my son. When he returned to Amelia's apartment, she was still sitting on the sofa, her hands clasped. I thought you wouldn't come back. she said without looking at him. "I'm not that kind of person." She let out a dry laugh. "I didn't know what kind of person you were when I left." He clenched his jaw. "That doesn't matter anymore. What matters is Leo." Amelia nodded slowly. "He's asleep." Daniel looked at the room where his son rested. His son. He still couldn't believe it. "I want to see him." She hesitated for a moment, but finally stood up and opened the door carefully. The room was small, barely lit by a nightlight. Leo slept with a relaxed face, hugging a worn teddy bear. Daniel approached slowly. He knelt beside the bed and watched him closely. Every feature, every tiny gesture was his. He felt a lump in his throat. 3 years. 3 years of not seeing him grow, of not hearing his first word, of not knowing anything about him. And that wasn't going to continue. He turned to Amelia, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm not going to lose any more time with him." She looked at him, with something that seemed like sadness in her eyes. "I know." Daniel stayed there, watching his son sleep. Nothing in the world would take him away from him again. "I want to be in his life." The slow dance of trust. Amelia closed Leo's bedroom door carefully and stood with her back to Daniel. His voice still resonated in her head. He didn't say it as a plea or as a negotiation. He said it with the certainty of a man who had made an irrevocable decision. She took a deep breath before turning around. "I don't know how to do this." Daniel looked at her sternly. "Me neither, but we're going to find a way." The silence between them was long, uncomfortable. "You can't just show up and make decisions," Amelia finally said. "It's not a decision. It's a right. He's my son." Amelia clenched her fists. "And what do you want to do? Move in here? Burst into his life and change everything?" "I don't want to hurt him," he replied, controlling his anger. "But I can't act as if nothing happened." She ran a hand over her face. "I'm not ready for this, Daniel." "Well, you'd better get ready," he blurted out, "because I'm not disappearing." Amelia fell silent, looking at him with a mixture of fear and resignation. She knew he meant it. Daniel stayed in the small town. He rented an apartment in the center, small but comfortable. He didn't want to pressure Amelia or Leo, but he also didn't intend to stay away. The first few days were difficult. Amelia set strict boundaries. She let him see Leo, but always with her present. No impromptu visits, no sudden changes. Daniel accepted the rules, at least for now. He knew he had to earn her trust. More importantly, he had to earn his son's trust. "Who are you?" Leo asked, looking at him curiously. It was the first time they were alone, even if only for a few minutes, while Amelia prepared coffee in the kitchen. Daniel smiled nervously. "I'm Daniel. Are you my mom's friend?" Daniel swallowed. "Something like that." Leo frowned, thoughtful. "You talk like me." Daniel let out a laugh. "How so?" "Fast and serious," the boy said, shrugging. Daniel felt a strange warmth in his chest. Maybe because we're alike. Leo stared at him, as if trying to find something in his face. "Are you going to come often?" "If your mom lets me, yes." The boy studied him a little longer, and then nodded naturally. "Okay." Daniel smiled. He knew he still had a long way to go, but at least he had taken the first step. "You can't expect everything to be easy." Amelia had her arms crossed as she looked at Daniel from the doorway. Leomas had just fallen asleep after spending the afternoon with his father, and the atmosphere between them was tense. Daniel took a deep breath. "I don't expect it to be easy, but I'm not going to stand by and watch from the sidelines either." She shook her head, exhausted. "You don't understand how complicated this is. Leo has only had BD. His world is small, safe, and now suddenly you appear because you were always supposed to be here." He interrupted her firmly. "And don't tell me it wasn't my decision because I already know that. But now it is. Amelia lowered her gaze, biting her lip. Do you really think this is solved just by wanting to be here? Daniel crossed his arms. How do you want me to do it then? That I leave and wait for an invitation years from now? No, Amelia. I'm not going to make that mistake. She pressed her lips together, struggling with her thoughts. I don't want Leo to suffer, she murmured. Neither do I. There was a long silence between them. Finally, Amelia sighed. All right, we'll try, but at my pace. The only thing I want is for you to let me be his father. Amelia's eyes darkened for an instant. That's something that will take time. Daniel nodded. I'm in no hurry. She didn't believe him. She knew Daniel Brooks had never been a patient man. The following days were strange. Daniel spent more time with Leo, naturally gaining his trust. Despite the years of distance, the boy seemed to accept him easily. But not everything was so simple. Every time Daniel held him, every time Leo sought him out with excitement, Amelia felt a mixture of relief and fear. Relief because her son deserved a father. Fear because she didn't know how much longer she could keep the chaos this brought into her life under control. A mother's threat and a father's stand. And then, one afternoon, chaos found her first. Amelia was at the market when she felt a chill. She knew that feeling, that pressure in her chest, that certainty that something was wrong. She turned slowly, and there she was, Eleanor Brooks. The woman was impeccable as always, her hair perfectly styled, and her elegant posture, even though the market was not the type of place where one would expect to find her. Amelia felt her blood run cold. I can't believe you're here, Eleanor said with a calm voice, but sharp as a knife. Amelia clenched her fists. I'm not doing this. She turned to leave, but Eleanor stopped her with a subtle movement, barely a brush on her arm. Not so fast, she whispered. You haven't forgotten what we talked about 3 years ago, have you? Amelia felt nauseous. You lied to me. You told me Daniel had another life, that he didn't care. Eleanor smiled humorlessly. And wasn't it easier that way? For everyone. For you. Not for us. Eleanor's eyes hardened. Don't make this more difficult, Amelia. Difficult for whom? For you? For Leo, Eleanor said softly. Don't think Daniel can handle this. His life isn't made for a child. Do you really want your son to go through everything it means to be a Brooks? Amelia felt a lump in her throat. I don't care what you think. You should, because if you continue with this, he'll take him from you. Fear hit her like a punch. He wouldn't. Are you not sure? Because I am. Amelia felt her heart race. Eleanor looked at her calmly, as if she already knew she had won. I'm going to give you one chance, Amelia, to do the right thing. Amelia felt the trembling in her hands, but didn't let it show. I'm not leaving, Eleanor sighed. Then get ready to lose. And without another word, she walked away. Amelia stood there, feeling the ground sink beneath her feet, because she knew Eleanor Brooks did not make empty threats. Amelia closed her apartment door, her heart pounding. Her hands had been cold for hours since her encounter with Eleanor. She couldn't get her words out of her head, her calculating tone, the certainty with which she had said, he'll take him from you. She leaned her back against the door and took a deep breath. She couldn't panic. She couldn't afford to tremble. Her instinct screamed at her to run, that she had to disappear before Eleanor carried out her threat. But she couldn't. Leo already knew Daniel. He already saw him as someone important in his life. Leaving again was not an option, but neither could she stand idly by. Daniel arrived the next day, knowing nothing. What's wrong? He asked as soon as he saw her. Amelia couldn't completely hide it. She looked more tense, more tired. Nothing, she replied, looking away. Daniel frowned. Don't lie to me. Something happened. Amelia hesitated for a moment. She wasn't sure if she should tell him, but then she remembered that Daniel wasn't the same man as 3 years ago. "Your mother came to see me." Daniel fell silent. His gaze changed immediately. "What did she say?" "That I should leave, that I should do the right thing." Daniel let out a low laugh, but not of amusement. "Of course she did." Amelia crossed her arms. "She was serious, Daniel. I know, but I also know I'm not going to let her win." Amelia felt a chill. "It's not a game." Daniel looked at her intently. "Do you think I don't know that?" The atmosphere between them was heavy, but neither looked away. "Leave it to me," he finally said. "I'll fix this." Amelia let out an incredulous laugh. "You can't fix your mother, but I can make sure she doesn't come near you again." Amelia looked at him, doubting. "How?" Daniel smiled, but it was a cold smile. "Leave it to me." The showdown and a calculated retreat. Daniel didn't waste time. He called her that same afternoon. "Mother," Daniel said. "Alexander," Eleanor replied calmly. "What a surprise. We'll skip the pleasantries. I know you spoke with Amelia." Eleanor said nothing for a moment. Then her tone changed. "I did it because I'm worried." Daniel clenched his jaw. "Don't give me that. You did it because you hate not being in control. I'm thinking about your future." "No," he interrupted her. "You're thinking about yours." There was a long silence. "That child doesn't fit into your life, Daniel." Daniel felt something break inside him. "Are you really saying that? I'm not saying you don't want him. I'm saying he's not part of what you've built." Daniel closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "Listen carefully, Mom. I'm going to make this clear so there are no misunderstandings. Leo is my son, and you will not interfere in his life or mine again." Eleanor sighed. "Don't be dramatic. I'm not. I'm setting boundaries. That's what you think. But in the end, Daniel, you always come back to me." "Not this time." Eleanor remained silent, and for the first time in his life, Daniel felt that she didn't have the upper hand. "Do what you want," she said coldly, "but don't be surprised when things get complicated." Things are already complicated, and even so, I prefer this rather than continuing to be the obedient son you want. He hung up before she could reply. For the first time, he felt he had landed the first blow, but he knew Eleanor Brooks would not stand idly by. Daniel closed his eyes and exhaled sharply. He had just defied Eleanor Brooks, something very few had done without consequences. But this time, he wasn't going to back down. He ran a hand over his face and then looked at his phone. He had to focus on what was important. Amelia. The last thing he wanted was for his son to suffer because of his mother's manipulations. He had to strengthen his relationship with him. He had to show Amelia that he was here to stay. And he knew exactly how to start. "Do you want us 3 to go together?" Amelia frowned, surprised by Daniel's proposal. "Just to the park," he clarified. "I'm not saying we should move in together." Amelia crossed her arms. "Why do you suddenly want to do this?" "Because I want to get to know Leo in his own environment, without him feeling like I'm forcing him into something." She sighed, hesitating. Daniel didn't blame her, but after a long silence, she nodded. "All right." The park was full of children running and playing on the swings. Leo let go of his mother's hand and approached with curiosity. Daniel followed him with his gaze, not knowing quite what to do. "You've never dealt with children, have you?" Amelia asked softly. Daniel let out a dry laugh. "No." "It shows." She watched him for a moment, and then sighed. "Just follow him. Let him set the pace." Daniel didn't answer, but walked to where Leo was playing in the sand. "What are you building?" Leo replied, not looking up. "Can I help you?" The boy looked up, thoughtful, and then nodded. Daniel knelt down and picked up some sand, not knowing exactly what to do with it. "Not like that," Leo said impatiently. "First you have to make a base." Daniel smiled unknowingly. "And how do I do that?" Leo sighed as if he were talking to an absolute beginner. "I'll show you." And for the next half hour, Daniel listened carefully to each of his instructions. Amelia watched them from afar. She saw the way Leo spoke without fear, how Daniel listened patiently, how he laughed at the small things. She never imagined seeing them like this, and against all odds, her son seemed to trust him naturally. That was what scared her the most, because if Leo started to love him, if he started to see him as part of his life, she couldn't afford to lose Daniel again. Because if he left again, this time he wouldn't only break her heart, he would also break his son's. The slow bloom of trust. Amelia couldn't stop watching them. Daniel and Leo were still in the sand, now trying to build a tower taller than the previous one. Leo laughed every time the structure collapsed, while Daniel feigned frustration. It was a simple scene, but the feeling it provoked in Amelia was anything but simple. It was fear, not because Daniel was failing, but because he seemed to be doing too well. Too well. Every day, Leo became more accustomed to his presence, sought him out with more confidence, no longer seemed shy when Daniel arrived, and although Amelia knew it was what should happen, she couldn't ignore the worry that gnawed at her chest. What would happen if Daniel got tired? If he decided this was too much for him? If, after all, he ended up being just a visitor in Leo's life? "Are you tense again?" Daniel's voice pulled her from her thoughts. He stood in front of her, with Leo running around the yard. Amelia looked away. "I'm fine." "No, you're not," he said directly. "What's wrong?" She took a moment to respond. "I'm scared," she confessed softly. Daniel narrowed his eyes. "Of what?" Amelia swallowed before looking at him. "That this won't last." Daniel's face hardened. "I'm not leaving." "You say that now." "I say that because it's the truth." Amelia shook her head. "Daniel, you have another life. Businesses, trips, commitments. I don't know how long you can keep this up." Daniel crossed his arms. "And what if I tell you that I'm not leaving? That I'm not just here for a while?" Amelia looked at him with a mixture of skepticism and a desire to believe him. "I don't know if I can risk trusting that." Daniel took a step closer, his voice lower, but firm. "It's not just about you, Amelia. It's about Leo." She felt a lump in her chest. "I know," she whispered, "but that's precisely what scares me the most." The following days, Amelia tried to act normal. She didn't want to let her fear sabotage everything, but Daniel was perceptive. He watched her, noticed when she drifted off, when she seemed to hesitate every time Leo hugged him with excitement. And one day, after putting Leo to sleep, she couldn't take it anymore. "Tell me the truth, Amelia." She looked up from the teacup she held in the kitchen. "About what?" Daniel looked at her seriously. "About what's really bothering you." Amelia put the cup on the table and sighed. "I don't want Leo to get attached to you if you're not sure you're going to stay." Daniel placed his hands on the table, looking at her intently. "Amelia, this is not a game for me." "You say that now." Daniel clicked his tongue impatiently. "I'm not a child. I'm not doing this on a whim. I'm here because I want to be here." Amelia held his gaze, feeling her heart beating too fast. "And what if one day you decide you can't do it anymore?" He straightened up. "Then tell me what I have to do to prove to you that I'm not leaving." Amelia felt her throat close up, because she had no answer, because part of her didn't want one, and because she knew that if he kept insisting, she would end up falling. Daniel didn't bring up the topic again, but Amelia knew his answer still floated between them. He was determined to stay. She was afraid he would leave, and in the middle of it all was Leo, more and more comfortable with his presence. The days passed, and Daniel started picking him up from school when Amelia had work. Some afternoons, he would take him for ice cream. Others, they would just sit in the park and play. It was so natural, so simple, so dangerous, because for the first time Amelia started to imagine a future where Daniel was really there, not just as a temporary visitor, and that terrified her. One night, when Leo was already asleep, Daniel stayed in the apartment longer than usual. "Want some coffee?" Amelia asked, not realizing how strange it sounded. He looked at her with a faint smile. "Is that your way of telling me not to leave yet?" Amelia fell silent. She hadn't even thought about it. But when she realized she didn't want him to leave, her stomach churned. Daniel approached the table and sat across from her. "Tell me what's wrong." Amelia looked down. "Nothing." "Amelia." She pressed her lips together and looked him in the eyes. "I don't know what to do with you." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "I didn't know I was a problem." Amelia sighed. "You are, because you're here. Because Leo is getting used to you. Because I—" She stopped, feeling her heart pound in her chest. Daniel didn't look away. "You what?" Amelia swallowed and looked away. "It doesn't matter." Daniel leaned over the table. "It does matter." Amelia felt the room getting smaller, that Daniel was too close, that her feelings were too out of control. "I'm scared that this is starting to feel normal," she finally admitted. Daniel tilted his head. "Why?" She let out a dry laugh. "Because if this becomes normal, it means we could lose it." Daniel looked at her in silence for a long moment. Then, with a calm but firm voice, he said, "We're not going to lose anything." Amelia couldn't answer, because deep down, a part of her wanted to believe him, and that was what scared her the most. A year of normalcy and a promise kept. Daniel couldn't stop thinking about Amelia's words. "I'm scared that this is starting to feel normal." There was something in her voice when she said it. Not just fear, but also something deeper, something he couldn't name. He didn't want to pressure her anymore that night. He knew that forcing her would only make her shut down even more. But he was clear that Amelia felt something she was trying to avoid at all costs. And Daniel, for the first time in a long time, was not willing to let it go. The days continued. Leo waited for him excitedly every time he picked him up from school. Every time he saw him smile, Daniel felt something inside him solidify more. That child was his blood, and he couldn't believe he had almost been taken from him. But the most difficult part wasn't Leo. It was Amelia. She continued to keep her distance, although it was clear it was hard for her to do so. Every time their hands brushed while walking next to Leo, every time they were alone in the kitchen and the silence grew thick, Daniel noticed how her breathing changed. But she did nothing, and he was already tired of waiting. One afternoon, after putting Leo to sleep, Amelia went out onto the balcony for some air. Daniel followed her. "How long are you going to keep running from this?" She immediately tensed. "What are you talking about?" Daniel rested his hands on the railing, looking at the city. "Us." Amelia turned abruptly. "There is no us, Daniel." He smiled ironically. "Do you really believe that?" "It's the truth." "It's not." Amelia pressed her lips together. "Daniel, we can't." "Why not?" he interrupted. "Because you're scared?" She looked away. "It's not fear." "Of course it is. I don't want Leo to get confused," she said softly. Daniel stared at her intently. "Or you don't want to get confused yourself." The silence between them was unbearable. Amelia felt her pulse quicken. Daniel was too close, his voice too firm, too confident, and she was losing the battle she had tried to fight since he came back. Then, without thinking too much, she said the only thing she had left. This isn't going to work. Daniel didn't move. Why? Amelia closed her eyes for an instant before replying. Because I don't know how to trust you again. Daniel inhaled slowly. He didn't get angry. He didn't argue. He just nodded. Then tell me how to do it. She looked at him in surprise. What? Tell me how to make you trust me again. Amelia felt a lump in her throat, because she had no answer, because part of her didn't want one, and because she knew that if he kept insisting, she would end up falling. Daniel didn't pressure her after that night on the balcony, but Amelia knew he was waiting. He didn't say it. He didn't show it, obviously. But she saw it in his eyes every time they were close, in the patience with which he treated her, in the way he left space for her to make the decision. And the worst part was that, with each passing day, she felt her own defenses weaken. But then, everything changed. Daniel received the call when he least expected it. He was in his office reviewing some reports when his phone rang. He didn't recognize the number, but he answered immediately. Mr. Brooks? The voice on the other end of the line sounded formal, but with a hint of urgency. Yes, who is this? I'm your mother's lawyer. Daniel felt his blood boil. What the hell does she want now? There was a brief silence before the lawyer continued. I just wanted to inform you that Mrs. Eleanor Brooks has initiated legal proceedings to obtain custody of your son. The air seemed to leave his lungs. What did you say? Mrs. Brooks has argued that you and the child's mother are unfit to raise him. She has requested an evaluation to determine if Leo would be better under her care. Daniel's heart pounded with fury. This is insane. I know, sir, the lawyer said in a neutral tone, but the petition is already underway. Daniel was speechless. He couldn't believe it. He knew his mother wouldn't give up easily, but he never thought she would go this far. And the worst part was that now he had to tell Amelia. When he arrived at the apartment, Amelia opened the door with a frown. What's wrong? She asked instantly. Daniel wasted no time. We have a problem. Amelia felt a chill. What happened? My mother filed a lawsuit to get Leo. The world stopped. No, she can't do that, Amelia whispered, feeling short of breath. Yes, she can, and she's doing it. Amelia leaned against the wall. No, this can't be happening. Daniel took her by the shoulders, forcing her to look at him. I'm going to stop her. I'm not going to let her take our son. But Amelia barely heard him. Her worst fear had come true. Eleanor had fulfilled her threat. And now if they didn't do something, they could lose everything. Amelia felt her legs tremble. The world was crumbling around her, but Daniel held her firmly by the shoulders. Look at me, he said in a harsh voice. We're going to fix this. How? She whispered, fear reflected in her eyes. It's Eleanor. She's powerful. She has money, contacts, lawyers. And I do too, Daniel interrupted. I'm not going to let her win. But Amelia couldn't breathe. Her whole body was on alert, as if her instinct was screaming at her to run before it was too late. We need a plan, Daniel continued. We can't act impulsively. Amelia rubbed her temples. We can't let this go to trial. It won't. Amelia looked at him in disbelief. Daniel, your mother doesn't play fair. I know, he said coldly. And that's why I'm going to confront her her way. The next few days were chaos. Daniel contacted his trusted lawyers and prepared his defense. Amelia met with specialists to prove that Leo was fine with her, but anxiety wouldn't let her sleep. Every day she expected to receive a notification, a legal blow that would put them against the ropes, and when it came, it wasn't what she expected. A letter delivered to her door. You have one last chance to do the right thing. Don't make this harder for everyone. See you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eleanor. Amelia felt her blood run cold. You're not going alone, Daniel said, as soon as he read the letter. I'm not going at all, Amelia replied angrily. "If you don't go, you'll just give her more reasons to attack us." Amelia clenched her fists. "I'm not going to let her manipulate me again." Daniel looked at her seriously. "That's why I'm going with you." She hesitated. She knew confronting Eleanor was a risk, but she also knew they couldn't keep running. The meeting was at an elegant restaurant, away from the city. Eleanor was already waiting when they arrived. She was dressed as always, impeccable, with an expression of calm superiority. "I see you've brought reinforcements," she said with a sharp smile. Daniel sat across from her. "Cut the crap, Mom." Eleanor sighed with feigned disappointment. "Always so aggressive." Amelia crossed her arms. "Tell us what you want." Eleanor looked at them coldly. "I want what's best for Leo." Daniel let out a dry laugh. "And you're what's best?" "Of course." Amelia felt like screaming. "You don't care about him. You just want to control everything." Eleanor gave her a bored look. "What I want is to spare him a life of mediocrity." "Do you really think you can give him what he needs?" Amelia's stomach churned. "My son is not an object for you to decide what to do with him." Eleanor calmly took a sip of her coffee. "What he is a Brooks, and that means he deserves more than you can give him." Daniel looked at her with contained fury. "You're not going to touch him." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "And what are you going to do to stop me?" Silence spread between them. Amelia felt the fear in her skin. Eleanor never made empty threats. And the worst part was that he knew it. The war had just begun. Daniel clenched his fists under the table. "You're not going to win, Mom." Eleanor looked at him with an almost amused smile. "And who's going to stop me? You?" "Yes." His tone was so cold and firm that for the first time Eleanor's expression changed. Amelia saw the woman's eyes narrow slightly. She knew she was calculating. She was measuring her own son as if he were a pawn in her game. "You have no idea what you're doing," Eleanor finally said. Daniel rested his elbows on the table and spoke calmly. "Neither do you." The woman raised an eyebrow, as if amused by his bravery. "Enlighten me." Daniel took a deep breath and looked her directly in the eyes. "If you take this to court, I'll go public." Eleanor smiled, but there was a shadow in her gaze. "And you think that scares me? It doesn't scare you, but it makes you uncomfortable. And you hate being uncomfortable, don't you?" Amelia tensed. Daniel was right. Eleanor Brooks built her reputation on an image of an unblemished woman, a benefactor, an unbreakable businesswoman. A scandal of this magnitude would put the press all over her. Daniel continued without giving her time to respond. "I have proof of everything, of how you interfered in my private life, of how you manipulated Amelia to leave. And if you decide to go ahead with this, I swear every damn newspaper and every news outlet in this country will find out." Eleanor narrowed her eyes. "That will also affect you." "I prefer that, rather than you touching my son." The silence was heavy. Amelia felt her heart pound in her chest. Eleanor slowly turned her head towards her. "You approve of this?" Amelia didn't look away. "I don't need to approve of it. Leo is mine. And Daniel's, not yours." Eleanor smiled mockingly. "You have no idea the mistake you're making." Daniel crossed his arms. "We'll see." There was a long silence. Then Eleanor elegantly stood up and took her purse. "I'll think about it." Daniel and Amelia watched her walk away without saying a word, but they both knew that this war was not over yet. The next few days were hell. Every hour Amelia expected to receive notification of the lawsuit. Every call she received made her heart jump. But days passed and nothing came. Eleanor made no move, until, out of nowhere, Daniel received a message. "Enjoy your victory, But remember, Daniel, there's always more than one way to win. Amelia felt a chill when he showed her the screen. "What do you think it means?" she asked in a whisper. Daniel clenched his jaw. "It means that for now, she'll leave us alone." Amelia sighed, but her body remained tense. "I don't like this." Daniel looked at her seriously. "Me neither. But for the first time in my life, I think I beat my mother." And although fear still surrounded them, they knew they had crossed a line from which Eleanor could no longer return. No matter what she tried next, Leo was still with them, and that was all that mattered. This is such a gripping turn of events. Do you think Eleanor is truly defeated, or is she plotting something new? What do you think Daniel and Amelia's next steps should be? Share your predictions in the comments below. A year of normalcy. The air felt lighter in the following days. After weeks of tension, Eleanor had retreated. There were no more letters, no more threats, no more attempts at manipulation. But Amelia wasn't completely calm. "She can't give up that easily," she said one night while making coffee in the kitchen. Daniel, sitting at the table, watched her calmly. "It's not surrender, it's strategy." Amelia turned her head with a frown. "What do you mean?" Daniel shrugged. "That she won't do anything now because it's not convenient for her. But that doesn't mean she has accepted defeat." She felt a chill. "That doesn't give me peace." "She's not going to give it to you. But the difference is that now we know what we're up against." Amelia sighed and leaned her hands on the counter. "And what if one day she tries again?" Daniel stood up and walked to her. "Then we'll be ready." She closed her eyes for a moment. She felt like she had been waiting for an attack for so long that now that the battle seemed to be over, her body didn't know how to relax. Daniel noticed, and for the first time in a long time, he took her hand without her pulling away. "Amelia." She looked at him and saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before, something that made her feel safe. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you or to Leo." Amelia felt a lump in her throat. "I don't want this to just be a war against your mother, Daniel." "It's not." There was a long silence. Daniel gently squeezed her hand. "You said you didn't know how to trust me again." Amelia swallowed. "Yes." "And now?" She looked down for a moment. "Now I'm not sure." Daniel smiled, but not mockingly, but with patience. "That's progress." She let out a dry laugh. "Maybe." Daniel watched her in silence before letting go of her hand. "I'll wait." Amelia looked at him in surprise. "Wait for what?" "Until you're sure." And before she could respond, he walked away with a calm smile, leaving Amelia with a strange feeling in her chest. Because for the first time, she also wanted to wait. Because for the first time, she believed that maybe, just maybe, they could have a future together. A park, a promise, a real family. A year later, Amelia stopped at the park entrance and watched the scene in front of her. Leo ran across the grass, laughing out loud as Daniel chased him. "I'm gonna get you!" Daniel shouted with that playful voice he only used with his son. Leo shrieked with excitement and sped up, but his father caught him easily and lifted him into the air. "No! Yes!" Both laughed as if the world was only theirs. Amelia felt a pang in her chest, of happiness, of relief, of something she didn't dare to name, because after everything they had been through, after so many doubts and fears, they were here. Daniel noticed her watching and gave her a smile, one that didn't demand answers, one that simply said, "I'm here." Amelia approached and sat on their usual bench. Leo ran to her and hugged her legs. "Mommy, Daddy runs super fast." Amelia ruffled his hair. "That's because he has long legs." Daniel dropped down beside her, breathing deeply. "I'm too old for this." Amelia let out a laugh. "You're such a drama queen." He smiled sideways. You haven't seen me when my back hurts yet. She shook her head and looked at Leo, who was already playing with the dirt. He's happy. Daniel looked at her gently. We are too. Amelia felt the warmth in her chest. A year ago, she would never have imagined this moment. Not with Daniel. Not with the family they had rebuilt. But here they were. Not with a perfect ending. Not with a guaranteed forever. But with something much more real. With the promise to keep trying. This beautiful story of healing, trust, and the true meaning of family has reached its emotional conclusion. If you were moved by Daniel and Amelia's journey, please give this video a like and share it with someone who needs a reminder that love can truly conquer all. And for more inspiring tales of resilience and connection, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. The price of heritage, the twins of silence. He closed the door on her without a word, a single act of corporate obedience that cost him 5 years and 2 sons. 5 years ago, Adam Rivers was the golden heir, the perfect CEO who valued his family's multi-billion-dollar empire above all else. He was ruthless, untouchable, and utterly convinced that sacrificing Chloe Vance, the only woman who made him feel human, was a necessity. He thought the price was just a broken heart. He was wrong. The debt came due at a technology summit in London, when Adam looked up from signing a multi-million-pound deal and came face to face with 2 small boys, twin sons, Daniel and Liam, who shared his glacial blue eyes and his exact, unmistakable blonde hair. The reality hit him like a physical blow. The man he had been was a coward. The life he had built was a lie. This is the story of a man's agonizing journey to win back the family he abandoned, only to find himself in a far greater war, a desperate battle against his own father, Mr. Charles Rivers, who now seeks to destroy Adam's fragile new life. Mr. Charles will stop at nothing, even using the very names of his grandsons, L and D, to turn their innocence into the global, cold-hearted slogan of his corporate empire. Can true commitment, built on the humble foundations of a family garden, truly defeat the ambition and control of a global tech titan? Prepare for an emotional and financial showdown where the only thing at stake is the right to define a legacy. The Golden Mask and the CEO's Void. London in autumn is a city of sharp angles and blinding lights for the elite, and no one personified that forced perfection better than Adam Rivers. At 32, he was already the CEO of Rivers Tech Global, a multi-billion-dollar technology empire built on artificial intelligence and cloud innovation. His face graced the covers of Forbes UK. His keynote speeches at global summits were considered landmark events, and his handshake was synonymous with billions. Every photograph circulated of Adam was a study in pristine image. Perfectly combed ash blonde hair, glacial blue eyes that distilled just the right amount of calculated distance, and that precise smile that could close a deal before the first paragraph of the contract was read. He lived in a penthouse overlooking Hyde Park, drove a custom electric sports car, and wore bespoke suits worth an annual salary. To the world, he was perfection personified, disciplined, unstoppable, and destined for greatness. But there was one thing Adam didn't have, and for which he had once nearly risked everything: love. 5 years prior, before ascending to his full CEO role, Adam had been with someone who didn't fit the strict script his family had written for him. Her name was Chloe Vance. She wasn't a socialite or an investor. Chloe was a scholarship postgraduate student, studying architecture and working odd jobs. She wore paint on her jeans, and her notebooks were filled with chaotic sketches that, to Adam, were more beautiful than any executive blueprint. Chloe had long, rebellious brown hair, deep, expressive blue eyes, and a way of looking at Adam that made him feel more than a title. It made him feel human. With her, he didn't have to perform. He laughed louder, slept better, and dreamed of a freedom his gilded life denied him. Their relationship blossomed in intimacy. Night walks through the West End, shared takeout on rooftops overlooking London's skylines, and long conversations about fears and utopias. She didn't care about his money. She mocked his overly expensive watch and adamantly refused to let him pay her rent. She made him feel real in a world where everything about him felt curated. For the first time, Adam imagined a future that didn't revolve around quarterly reports, but around laughter in a tiny kitchen and children with blue eyes and indomitable energy. But his parents, Mr. Charles Rivers, chairman of the board, and his mother, Mrs. Eleanor Rivers, the matriarch of London high society, had other plans. The reaction upon discovering Chloe was immediate and brutal. Mr. Charles summoned him to his mahogany office and laid it out plainly. "She is not your equal. She dilutes your image. Marry her, and we will begin the process of removing you from succession." Mrs. Eleanor didn't even bother to hide her disdain. "Do you really want to shame the family? What will the shareholders think seeing you with someone so ordinary?" Adam fought back. He resisted. He said he didn't care about perception. But Rivers Tech was a brand. His name was an investment. The pressure intensified from family to advisors, reminding him of historical obligations. The worst part, Adam never told Chloe the truth. One day, he simply ended it. No explanation, no discussion. He told her he needed to focus on his career and walked out of her small apartment in Shoreditch, leaving behind the woman with whom he'd imagined a forever. He buried himself in work, trying to convince himself it was necessary, that it was for the greater good. But not a day passed without him missing her laugh, the way she pronounced his name when she was angry, and the way she made him feel like a man, not a product. 2. The hidden truth in 2 heartbeats. Chloe's sacrifice. Chloe Vance had never believed in fairy tales, but falling in love with Adam Rivers had felt dangerously close to one. She believed his unfinished promises and his desire to escape the world of cameras. But one day, he vanished. No goodbye, just a cold, carefully worded message that he needed space to focus on his future. She waited. She called. She left a long, desperate voicemail. But the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was deliberate. It was definitive. And then she stopped waiting. Chloe threw herself into her work, trying to drown the anguish in blueprints and models. But only a few weeks later, she started noticing the changes in her body. The fatigue, the nausea, the missed period. She told herself it was stress. But when she took the pregnancy test and saw the result, positive, she caught her breath. The doctor confirmed the pregnancy. But the ultrasound revealed something unexpected. 2 heartbeats. Twins. 2 lives growing inside her. 2 vivid reminders of a man who had walked away without looking back. She considered calling him again. But she remembered the cold rejection from his assistant and the way he had vanished as if she meant nothing. She decided she couldn't go through that again. Chloe made the decision to leave London. She accepted a job in a smaller city, in a drafting office where no one asked about her past. She rented a modest flat and lived cautiously, saving every penny. The twin pregnancy was exhausting, but she was tougher. She worked despite swollen feet and sleepless nights, consuming prenatal vitamins with food stamps and skipping meals to pay for baby clothes. And when the time came, she gave birth to 2 healthy, beautiful boys, Daniel and Liam. They had blonde hair from the start and the bluest eyes she had ever seen. It was like looking at 2 tiny versions of the man she had loved. At first, it broke her heart to see him in their faces. But over time, that feeling softened into something stronger. Fierce love. Her sons were her everything. loud, messy, and perfect. She fed them, dressed them, kissed their scrapes, and read them stories even when she could barely stand. Chloe never mentioned Adam's name. When the boys asked about a father, she told them the truth, gently, that sometimes people leave because they are afraid of love, and that is not our fault. 3. Destiny calls at the summit. The return to London. Do you think destiny always finds a way to close the circles that fear opens? Or do you think Chloe should have tried to contact Adam one last time upon learning of the pregnancy? Share your opinion in the comments. If Chloe's courage inspires you, show it with a like and share this drama. The invitation arrived unexpectedly, buried in Chloe's freelance email inbox. Architectural Futures Forum. Speaker selection. She thought it was a mistake. She had never presented at an event of this caliber, much less in London. But the message was real. They had reviewed her design proposal for a women's shelter, sustainable, low cost, and community-focused, and wanted her to speak on the panel. It was the opportunity she had dreamed of for years. Returning to London 5 years later was surreal. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt familiar. She arrived with Daniel and Liam, 2 energetic 5-year-olds, who asked non-stop questions on the flight and stared in awe at the city skyline. She dressed them neatly for the forum, in small collared shirts and clean sneakers, with a backpack full of coloring books and snacks to keep them occupied. The event was held in a downtown glass skyscraper, with sunlight flooding the room. Chloe tried not to think about the possibility of running into anyone. London is huge. He won't be here. Why would he be? But then she heard his voice. She was mid-sentence, answering a reporter's question, when the deep, all too familiar voice resonated through the air. Chloe froze. Her stomach lurched before her eyes confirmed it. Adam Rivers was less than 20 feet away, laughing softly with a group of impeccably suited sponsors. He hadn't changed. Immaculate blonde hair, effortless posture, but harder, with more of a sharp edge. His expression was one of calm, until his gaze landed on her. Chloe saw the exact moment reality hit him. First confusion, then shock, then something deeper. His eyes flickered from Chloe to the 2 boys sitting on the floor behind her table, coloring quietly on the carpet. Time slowed down. Adam's face went pale, almost gray. His gaze fixed on the twins, and Chloe could see the gears turning in his mind. Fast, desperate. He walked toward her. She stiffened, clutching the edge of the display table as if it could anchor her to the earth. He stopped in front of her, his voice barely audible. "Chloe." She didn't answer. He looked at the boys, then back at her, visibly trembling. "Are they?" She held his gaze. "Yes," she said calmly and quietly. "They're yours." Adam stumbled back, stunned. He looked like a man who had just been punched. "I didn't know," he said. "I had no idea." "I know," she replied, her voice firm. "I tried. You made sure I couldn't reach you. But why didn't you try again?" Chloe allowed herself a soft, bitter, tired laugh. "I did. I left messages. I sent letters. Your assistant told me not to call again. I assumed you had made your choice." Adam looked down, the weight of the truth and the shame settling heavily on his face. He looked at the boys again. Daniel looked up, smiled, and waved innocently. "I need to talk to you," Adam said, his voice cracking slightly. Chloe crossed her arms. "Now you want to talk, after 5 years, at a public event." He nodded slowly. "Yes, I need to explain, and I need to understand." She stared at him. The pain she had buried deep surfaced, but she didn't let it out. "You don't get to walk back into this like nothing happened," she said. "But if you truly want to understand, start by learning their names." Adam turned to the boys, knelt down and asked gently, "What are your names?" "I'm Daniel," said one. "I'm Liam," the other added. "What's your name?" "I'm Adam," he replied with a sad smile. They didn't recognize him. Why would they? Chloe watched, her heart pounding wildly. The truth was out, and nothing would ever be the same. 4. The weight of consistency, rebuilding brick by brick. Adam didn't sleep that night. The image of Daniel and Liam, their names, their tiny blue eyes, haunted him in his penthouse, now a place empty of meaning. The next morning, he secretly requested a DNA test. It wasn't for legality. It was because he needed permission to believe the truth he already knew. 3 days later, the result: 99.9% match. There was no denying it. He was their father. Adam looked at the document as if it were something sacred and heavy, the key to a door he himself had locked. Chloe agreed to meet him at a small cafe. No lawyers, no assistants. They sat face to face, two people separated by years of pain, yet eternally linked by 2 boys. "I have the results," Adam finally said. "They're mine." Chloe nodded. "I know. I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything you don't mean," she replied, her eyes clear. "I mean everything now, Chloe. I swear. I wanted to fight, but my parents, the board, everything collapsed. I didn't know how to be the man they expected, and the man you needed. You chose them," Chloe said, without malice. "You left, and I had to raise them without you. While you built empires, I built cribs." Adam winced. Her words weren't cruel. They were simply true. "I'm not asking for forgiveness yet," he said, humbled. "I just want a chance to know them, to be part of their lives. I can't go back, but I can show up now. I can try." Chloe studied him cautiously. "They're 5 years old. They don't understand betrayal, only presence. You can't just walk in and out. If you want to be in their lives, it has to be completely." "I'm in," he said without hesitation. "Whatever the cost," she conceded. "You'll start small. Pick them up from school one day. Come to the park. If they ask, answer honestly. But if they run, don't chase them. Just be there." The visits began consistently. Adam showed up at the school, at the park, in clumsy casual clothes, but with an iron commitment. No suits, just ice cream stains on his jeans. One day at the park, Liam fell off the slide. Adam ran over, knelt down, and gently checked his arm. "You're okay," he said tenderly. Liam blinked. "You sound like Mom." Adam smiled. "I'm trying to be good at this." That small gesture almost broke him. Daniel, who was observing with that calculating gaze Adam knew from himself, finally approached. "Are you coming back?" Adam looked him in the eyes. Firm. "Yes, I will come back. Again and again and again." V. The title that money can't buy. The emotional summit. It's been 3 months of total consistency. What do you think has been harder for Adam? Walking away from his CEO life, or keeping his promise to show up for every moment, no matter how small? Leave us your opinion, and don't forget to subscribe. One Saturday afternoon, Chloe dropped the boys off at Adam's penthouse. He had redecorated his luxurious space for them. Toys in wicker baskets, a small drawing table, and a refrigerator stocked with juices he detested, but they loved. They built a pillow fort between the sofas. Daniel was the captain. Liam, the science officer. Adam played as Commander Daddy, a name Liam invented mid-game and said without thinking. Adam froze for a second. "Daddy." He didn't respond immediately, fearing that if he reacted too much, the boy would retract it. But inside, the word resonated like an anthem he never knew he needed. Later, while they watched cartoons, Liam snuggled up next to him and looked at him. "Can I call you Daddy now, or do I have to wait?" Adam felt a lump in his throat. He looked at Liam, then at Daniel, who watched him silently. "You can call me whatever feels right," he said hoarsely. "But if you want to call me Daddy, I would be very proud." That night, Chloe arrived to pick them up and found them asleep on the sofa. Adam curled protectively with them, the TV softly humming. She stood watching them. The wall she had built was crumbling. Waking Adam, he helped carry them to the car. "Liam called me Daddy today," he said quietly. Chloe looked at him. "He wouldn't have asked you if he didn't truly mean it." Adam didn't sleep again that night. He stayed awake, feeling complete for the first time in years. Not because of success or wealth, but because two small boys had chosen to let him in. Not as a guest, but as their father. 6. The final confrontation and the new success. The price of humanity. Adam knew he had to face his parents. The confrontation was no longer for closure. It was for clarity. He arrived at the Rivers estate one Sunday morning. Mr. Charles received him in the library, with his mother appearing moments later, immaculate and cold. "I'm surprised you came," his father said. Adam stood by the fireplace, unyielding. "We need to talk about Chloe and the boys." His mother tensed. "We warned you about her years ago." "You didn't warn me. You lied to me." Adam's voice was controlled, but sharp. "You blocked letters. You ignored calls. You had her kept away. You chose the wrong woman." "We did what was necessary to protect your future," Mr. Charles countered. "You chose the girl who had nothing. That girl is the mother of my children. The children you didn't even bother to know existed. She raised them alone, and they turned out to be better people than everything this family has produced." His father adopted a strategic tone. "And now what? Are you going to play house and pretend to be a family man?" Adam looked at him with disgust. "I don't care what the world buys. I care what Daniel and Liam see when they look at me. I care what kind of man I am when I tuck them in at night." "I'm not here to ask for your blessing," Adam declared, looking at both of them. "Your control ends here. If you cannot accept my family, you will not be a part of our lives. That is your choice. But I am done living under your version of success." A heavy silence fell. Adam saw a visible crack in the facade of power they had always wielded. "I pity you," he added quietly. "You will never know them. You will never hear Liam explain why he thinks the moon controls feelings, or see how Daniel draws his dreams. You will lose everything. And one day, you'll realize you traded your grandchildren for control." He turned and walked out. 7. The rooted home. Almost a year after the reunion, Adam's life wasn't perfect, but it was full. His mornings began with spilled cereal, mismatched socks, and the chaos of getting two boys out the door. His penthouse, once so sterile, had been transformed into a lived-in home, with crayon drawings taped to the fridge. One Saturday morning, as the boys played and Chloe made coffee, Adam walked up to her. There was no velvet case. There was a simple, clean box, carefully chosen with a delicate but strong ring. "I don't want to rewrite the past," Adam said, kneeling before her, in front of the boys. "I just want to write the rest of the story with you in it, as your partner, as the father of our sons, as the man who finally understands what it means to love completely and to show up entirely." Chloe's eyes shone, and she smiled. "Yes," she said simply. "I don't need perfection. I just need you." They married a few months later, not in a hotel ballroom, but in the small community garden Chloe had helped design years ago. Daniel and Liam wore matching vests and carried the rings, too excited to walk slowly. The vows were short, honest, and unpolished. Promises to choose each other, not just on sunny days, but also on the difficult ones. When they kissed, the kiss didn't mark a beginning. It sealed something that was already built. Slowly, painfully, and beautifully. As the sun set and the boys ran among the ivy, Adam stood, his hand intertwined with Chloe's, feeling a peace he had never known in his former life. He had believed that success was power and control. But there, barefoot in a garden, with his wife and sons chasing butterflies, he finally understood. He was home. Completely. Finally. And this time he wasn't going anywhere. What an ending. Adam Rivers's redemption is proof that consistency and humility are worth more than all the empires. What part of the story did you find most touching? The confrontation with his parents, or the moment Liam called him Daddy? Tell us in the comments, and if you enjoyed this epic, don't forget to share it. B. The calm before the tech storm. The silence before the storm. The first year of marriage was the true honeymoon, not of exotic trips, but of shared routine and a profound peace. Adam Rivers never thought possible. His penthouse, once a cold luxury display, was now an ecosystem of life. The smell of coffee and toast in the morning, crayon drawings taped to the fridge with magnets, and, most importantly, the constant sound of Daniel and Liam's laughter. Adam had discreetly sold his majority stake in Rivers Tech, a move Mr. Charles considered an unprecedented betrayal, and invested in Chloe's small firm, rebranded as Vance Rivers Sustainable Architecture. He used his business acumen to secure contracts, while Chloe led the design vision, focused on creating human-centered and ecological spaces. For the first time, work felt like purpose, not obligation. The twins, now 6, were their gravitational center. They had accepted Adam as their father without reservation, though with the brutal frankness of childhood. "Daddy Adam, why did you only like glass before, and now you like dirt?" Daniel asked one day, while they played with potted plants. Adam didn't have to lie. "Because I realized that real life grows in the dirt, not in the glass, son." Chloe, for her part, had allowed herself to relax. She still maintained an instinctive wariness, a shadow of the woman who survived alone. But Adam's consistency was a daily cure. Her hands, once tense from constant worry, now reached for his, an unconscious gesture of trust that was worth more than all the "I love yous" in the world. The silent challenge. The only disturbance in this bubble of happiness were the quiet messages coming from the Rivers Tech empire. They weren't direct threats, but moves on the chessboard. Mr. Charles was using his vast influence to block construction licenses in London, pressure banks to deny loans to the new firm, and sow doubt in the specialized press about Adam's ability to handle serious projects after his emotional defeat. They were subtle attacks, designed not to destroy, but to slowly asphyxiate their new company. Adam and Chloe handled it together, often staying up late, analyzing contracts and looking for alternative legal strategies. One day, Chloe asked him, "Do you think your father will ever stop?" Adam squeezed her hand, his expression hard. "My father doesn't understand limits, Chloe, only control. But we built something in real life. He only has paper and shares, and real life always wins." Ike's, the siren song of Silicon Valley. But can real life truly win against the will of a billionaire with a wounded ego? What would you do if your success was under constant threat from the ghost of your past? Leave us your strategy in the comments. And like if you think Adam should fight back. Mr. Charles's response was not a threat, but a temptation. A month after a major mortgage loan was denied due to sudden risks, a clear manipulation by Mr. Charles, Adam received a call. Not from his father, but from Ethan Ward, the CEO of one of Silicon Valley's most successful AI startups and a former Rivers Tech competitor. The conversation was brief and to the point. Ethan was developing a project for sustainable smart cities, a dream that exactly matched Chloe's vision, and needed a partner with Adam's business vision, but without Rivers Tech's cold ethics. The offer. The proposal was astronomical. The directorship of the Smart Urban Development Division, stock compensation that doubled his lost wealth, and, most tempting, total freedom to build their vision on a new coast, far from the suffocating reach of Mr. Charles in London. Adam fell silent. Silicon Valley. He could be free forever from his father's shadow. He could guarantee Chloe and the boys unmatched financial security, freeing her from constant economic worry. That night, he presented the offer to Chloe. "It's a chance to build our vision on a global scale, Chloe," he said, his voice filled with an excitement he hadn't felt since his Rivers Tech days. "And most importantly, it's total liberation from my father. He has zero influence in San Francisco." Chloe listened intently, studying the proposal blueprint. There was a glimmer of architectural interest in her eyes, but also a shadow of unease on her mother's face. "It's tempting," she admitted, tracing a line on the blueprint with her finger. "But it's the same game, Adam. Again the scale, again the corporate success. And," she looked up, her eyes fixing on him with painful clarity, "it's the same promise of success that forced you to leave me 5 years ago. What if Silicon Valley has its own Mr. Charles?" The question sent a chill down Adam's spine. He had changed, but the corporate world remained the same. Was he running from his father instead of confronting him? The family decision. Adam spent the next 2 weeks consumed by doubt. On one hand, security and global freedom. On the other, the authenticity and home they had fought so hard to build in London. The decision in the end was not Adam's or Chloe's, but Daniel and Liam's. One Sunday afternoon, while walking in Hyde Park, the same park Adam used to overlook from his old penthouse, and now walked in as a free man, Adam explained the proposal simply. "Daddy has a chance to go to a place called America, where we can build very modern, self-healing houses with lots of light, and where we'll earn lots of money. But we'd have to move from our little house." Liam, the more sensitive one, clung to Chloe's hand. "What about the flower grandparents? The elderly couple Chloe helped in the community garden where they married. Who will water their geraniums?" Daniel, the more logical one, looked at his father. "If we earn lots of money, will you have to go back to working all day in the glass building and only talking about numbers?" Daniel's question was the sword of Damocles. The boy didn't fear the move or the unknown. He feared the return of the absent man his father had been. Chloe held his gaze, letting her son's question resonate. Adam knelt, feeling the weight of his answer. "No, my love, I won't go back to the glass building, but I would have to work more than I do here, and maybe I'd be more tired." Daniel shrugged, a mature sadness in his blue eyes. "Then it's not worth it. Our house here doesn't heal itself, but you heal us with stories, and that's priceless." Liam nodded fervently, hugging Adam's leg. "Stay here, Daddy. Big houses are boring." The twins' answer was a moral command. They chose the value of presence over the value of heritage. Adam stood up, feeling firmer than ever. That night, he called Ethan Ward and respectfully declined the offer, explaining that his priority now was the architecture of his family, not that of smart cities. 11. The final act. A garden versus an empire. Reflection time. The twins chose love over money. But do you think Emperor Charles will accept this defeat? Do you think Adam did right by following his son's advice on a business matter? Leave it in your comment. Don't forget to subscribe and share this family's courage. Adam didn't leave. He stayed in London, and that was the true counterattack against his father. He proved he wouldn't run from his city or his destiny. Seeing that his financial suffocation strategy wasn't working, Mr. Charles Rivers was forced to make a public and humiliating move for Adam, launching a public bid to forcibly acquire the Community Garden of Hope, the very garden where Adam and Chloe had married, and which was the heart of Chloe's latest major project. Mr. Charles's plan: replace it with a Rivers Tech Convention Center, a cold symbol of his power. The news was a bomb in the London press. Mr. Charles wanted to destroy his son's sanctuary. The family didn't crumble. They united. Chloe, with renewed ferocity, organized the neighbors and affected small businesses. Adam, using his old contacts, leaked details to the press about Rivers Tech's corporate bullying tactics and the project's lack of ethics. The final battle was not fought in a boardroom, but in the heart of the city. The last speech. At the final public hearing at City Hall, Adam Rivers presented himself, not as the CEO, but as an ordinary neighbor. He gave a simple speech, devoid of technical terms, that held the audience's breath. My name is Adam Rivers. I grew up with a last name that means power. I believed that success was building taller and earning more money. That's why, years ago, I left the woman I loved. He paused, looking at Chloe, who held Daniel and Liam's hands. My father wants to replace this garden, where I found my real life, with a glass building. He wants to build over the ground we healed, but this is not about who has more money. It's about what deserves to grow. He pointed to his sons, who looked at him with proud eyes. My true success is not Rivers Tech. It is them. And I taught them that the value of a life is not measured by its height, but by the depth of its roots. He looked at the audience. Today, we choose the roots. We choose the garden. We choose what is real. The result. The audience erupted in applause. The social pressure and Chloe Vance's impeccable legal defense forced Mr. Charles to withdraw the bid. The garden was saved. It was a symbolic victory, the garden defeating the empire. Mr. Charles Rivers, for the first time in his life, lost a battle. And that loss didn't cost him money, but the last vestige of control over his son, the chosen legacy. The Vance Rivers sustainable architecture firm flourished. They never built a skyscraper, but they built something better. Communities. And so, Adam Rivers, the man who once fled love for an empire, found that his true power was not in the tallest building, but in the firmness of his roots and the noisy hugs of two children who would never let him doubt his worth. Chapter 12. The silent return of the shadow. The triumph in the community garden of Hope case felt like an act of liberation for Adam. The corporate world and the press saw Mr. Charles Rivers' defeat as a public humiliation that, curiously, elevated Adam's reputation not as a magnate, but as a social hero. The Vance Rivers sustainable architecture firm flourished, flooded with projects seeking not just designs, but an ethical purpose. Family life achieved a vibrant harmony. Evenings ended with the four of them snuggled on the sofa reading. Daniel and Liam, now in a school with more trees than concrete, grew up with the unwavering security of a present father. However, Adam knew his father. Mr. Charles didn't retreat. He retrenched. For 6 months, there was a total silence from the Rivers patriarch. No calls, no banking pressure, no press articles. It was an unnatural calm, the stillness of the jungle before the predator strikes. The broken peace dinner. The first sign that the war wasn't over came in the form of a formal invitation. A peace and reconciliation dinner at the family mansion. Chloe advised caution, but Adam felt it was time to look his father in the eyes as an equal. Adam attended alone. The dinner was impeccable, cold, and brief. Mr. Charles didn't apologize. He merely acknowledged Adam's resilience, a compliment that sounded more like a strategic analysis than affection. You have grit, Adam. I'll grant you that, Mr. Charles said, sipping his single malt. But you didn't use your talent to its maximum expression. You built a garden when you could have built a city. A pity. Adam smiled. I built what is real, Father. You only build what is profitable. The patriarch stood up. We shall see, son. We shall see. There are many ways to build a legacy. The next day, the calm broke. Not with a lawsuit or banking pressure, but with a massive, global corporate event that dominated the headlines. Rivers Tech Global had secretly acquired Ethan Ward's tech holding in Silicon Valley. The CEO who had offered Adam freedom was quietly absorbed. Ethan's dream of sustainable smart cities was now in Mr. Charles's hands. But what truly chilled Adam's blood was the advertising campaign that immediately followed. The new project, a digital urban utopia promising to change the lives of millions, was named Project L&D The Legacy. The initials, L and D, were the same as his sons, Liam and Daniel. The message was clear and chilling. Mr. Charles had not only taken his son's project, but had baptized it with his grandson's names, reclaiming the vision and heritage Adam had denied him. It was a perfect psychological war, using the children's innocence as the new facade of the empire. Adam returned home, pale. Chloe, seeing the news on her tablet, understood immediately. "It's not about the money, Chloe," Adam said, his voice barely a whisper. "It's about the boys. He's using their future, their name, to build his latest, greatest lie." Chloe took his hand, with a firmness that surprised Adam. She was no longer the frightened woman of the past. "Then we will show him that the true L&D legacy is built in a garden, not on a server. He has a name. We have real life." Adam looked at her. The game had changed. It was no longer about money or buildings, but about protecting his son's identity and future from a grandfather who wanted to turn them into a brand slogan. Open ending. The question of legacy. That night, as Daniel and Liam slept, oblivious to the epic battle being waged over their names, Adam sat by the window with Chloe. "What do we do, Chloe? This is a game I can't win in London. If he uses their name, he'll do it all over the world." Chloe looked out at the city lights, thinking of their small garden and the monstrous shadow of Project L&D. "There's only one way to protect their legacy, and that is to build ours first, Adam. We'll have to take the rooted life to a place Mr. Charles never thought we'd go. A place where our project can eclipse his, not in height, but in human value." She turned to look at him, her eyes burning with a mix of fear and resolution. "The problem is, where do we go? And most importantly, are we ready for Daniel and Liam to face the truth that their grandfather is the villain of this story? The question hangs in the air. Cole. Final chapter. The unwritten page of the L&D legacy. The photograph of the Project L&D The Legacy campaign lay on the kitchen table, cold and sharp, a stark contrast to the warmth of the home-cooked dinner Chloe had prepared. The initials of their sons, Liam and Daniel, were used as a corporate weapon, turning innocence into a slogan for Rivers Tech Global. Adam was silent, his jaw clenched. He wasn't just angry. He felt a terrifying echo of his past, realizing his father would stop at nothing. "He wants to own their names," Adam finally whispered, his voice raw. "He wants to take the very thing I fought for, the reality of their lives, and turn it into a lie on a global scale. I can't let them grow up seeing their names plastered on a skyscraper that represents everything I ran from." Chloe walked over and placed her hands firmly on his shoulders, grounding him. "Then we fight fire with roots, Adam. We're not fighting a project. We're fighting a definition. His L&D is legacy and domination. Ours has to be love and development." They spent the night in intense discussion. Maps of the world spread across the floor, their hands tracing continents. Fighting Mr. Charles legally in London was a slow, toxic path that would consume their focus and emotional energy, dragging the children through endless media scrutiny. The boys deserved better. The answer, they realized, was to build a greater truth, the great choice, rooted in the world. A week later, Adam called a press conference, but not in London. He was in San Francisco, standing outside the former Ethan Ward headquarters, now a Rivers Tech property. He didn't speak about his father's actions, the lawsuit, or the betrayal. He spoke about choice. "My wife and I believe that true technology should serve humanity, not profit," Adam announced, looking directly into the camera. "We will not compete with Project L&D, but we will redefine what legacy means." He then revealed the Vance Rivers Foundation, dedicated to global sustainable development, and announced their first major commitment, taking their rooted life architectural vision to Latin America, starting with a large-scale, ethical housing project in Colombia. "We are leaving London," he stated simply. "We are choosing to build a legacy for our sons, Liam and Daniel, where their names stand for human impact, not corporate control. My father chose to build a monument to his ego. We choose to build a future for those who need it most." The world reacted with stunned admiration. Adam Rivers, the man who walked away from billions, was now using his knowledge to fight his father's empire with goodness. The open ending. A new horizon. A month later, the family stood at the airport. Daniel and Liam, initially sad to leave their garden, were buzzing with the excitement of building a house that heals itself in a new country. Mr. Charles made no move to stop them. The silence from him was the heaviest threat of all. He had lost control, but he had not admitted defeat. He now controlled the L&D Legacy Global multi-billion-dollar project, while Adam was headed to a place of uncertainty and noble struggle. As they passed through the gate, Chloe turned to Adam, a mixture of fear and fierce pride in her eyes. "We just gave up everything familiar, Adam," she whispered. Adam smiled, leaning down to kiss her. "No, we didn't give up anything. We chose the only thing that truly matters, our freedom to define our own success." He took the hands of his sons. Liam looked up at him, his blue eyes earnest. "Will we still read stories, Daddy?" "Every single night," Adam promised. As the family walked toward their new life, their path was uncertain, shadowed by the looming threat of the Rivers tech empire that now shared their sons' initials. They were starting over, not from zero, but from a foundation of love and unbreakable commitment. The question remained, could the true L&D legacy, love and development, built on human connection, truly defeat the corporate machine of Mr. Charles Rivers on the global stage? Their battle was just beginning,